NASCAR Xfinity Series teams are absolutely dominating Throwback weekend so far. Should NASCAR return to Kentucky Speedway? Maybe. And Jesse Love will be making his NASCAR Cup Series debut very soon. Welcome back to Break Hard. I'm Matt. No video on Thursday because I was at Reds opening day. And if you've never done opening day in Cincinnati, you absolutely should. It's a holiday around here. People take off work. Thousands flood the streets. There's a big parade. Michael Waltrip was there. And then you get to go in and watch the Reds do what the Reds do, which is make you believe and then ultimately end up losing the game at the end. But hey, it's game one of 162. Maybe it'll get better. Now, let's get into what we want to talk about today. We're going to start off with the NASCAR Xfinity Series and their absolute domination of Throwback weekend so far. Now, on the Cup side of things, we've gotten some pretty good paint schemes. William Byron, Kyle Larson, the Ryan Blaney paint scheme that was announced on Friday. He's throwing it back to his dad's Haas Avocado paint scheme from the Busch Series when he took that car to victory lane at Charlotte. Then you got some bad ones, Chase Elliott, and like that. But overall, there's been some pretty decent ones. The Xfinity side of things, though, they're dominating. They're Nelson from The Simpsons. They're eating everybody's lunch. They're taking their money, and they're doing it really, really well. Because we're going to start off with Brennan Poole over at Alpha Prime Racing. He's doing a throwback to Jeff Gordon's 2001 Looney Tunes Chrome Illusion paint scheme, and it's perfection. It's done so well. They got a cartoon character on there. They got their sponsors to allow them to contort it and basically just have it match what the existing sponsors were on the car already. You got DuPont, Quaker State, Pepsi, Fritos, all on there, and it looks phenomenal. Chef's kiss, as the kids like to say there. Moving on from that, you got Parker Retzlaff. He's doing a Kodak, Morgan McClure throwback, Swervin' Irvin, getting his day in the sun right there. Listen, you put that Kodak gold on there, I'm always going to think that I'm going to be a fan of it. I'm going to think it looks good every single time, and they did a phenomenal job with it. The Siegs, great job by them. You have Kyle Sieg, who's going to be driving the number 28 Haviland throwback from Ricky Rudd. 2002 Ricky Rudd throwback looks great. On the other side of things, you have Ryan Sieg, who's doing a Dale Jarrett 1999 Quality Care white throwback. Really well done by both of those guys over there. The Siegs knocked it out of the park with this one. Junior Motorsports, you have Connor Zilic doing a Buddy Baker 1987 Crisco throwback, which looks great. And you're probably wondering, it looks like a Dale Jr. car. It was the inspiration for Dale Jr.'s rides over at Hendrick Motorsports. Sammy Smith doing a Three Doors Down throwback from 2003. Kryptonite, is that Three Doors Down? I'm not going to sing for you guys, but I believe that's what it is there. Looks great. Good throwback. I remember that car running. And then you also have Carson Quapple. He's doing a Jamie McMurray Bass Pro Shops throwback to 2010 when McMurray won the Daytona 500 as well as the Brickyard 400. But we're not going to stop there. We're getting double McMurrays here because Dean Thompson is doing a Jamie McMurray Roush Racing throwback to the number 26 Irwin car. And that one looks really well done as well. Mason Massey is doing a Jimmy Spencer Winston No Bull throwback. That is a tobacco sponsor, and I'm here for every second of it because it looks really, really good. Daniel Dye over at Cog Racing, he's got an Adam Petty Spree throwback, and it looks super good. I love the colors on it. I love that it all matches. I love when things come together, and it looks like it did back then. Like we talked about with the Chase Elliott thing, they're supposed to be twins. They're not supposed to be third cousins where you're like, I can kind of see the resemblance. They're supposed to be twins, at least as close to twinning as you can get there. And they do a really good job of it. Moving on from that, you've got Jeremy Clements. He has a Harry Gant throwback on his car, and I don't care how many times people do Harry Gant throwbacks. I'm going to be a fan of them every single time because the green, the white, and the paint schemes go together super well, and I'm a huge fan of those. Then over at Joe Gibbs Racing, you have Brandon Jones doing a Matt Kenseth Dollar General throwback. It doesn't have the orange bumper on it, but regardless, I'm sure Joe Logano is still going to have PTSD when he sees this car. And then you also have William Sawalch doing a Kyle Busch NOS Energy throwback, which I think everybody has PTSD from that because I think Kyle won 10 of his 17 starts that year in that car. Just a really, really good run for Kyle Busch doing typical Kyle Busch things. But so far, they've had phenomenal paint schemes. Huge fan of everything that they're doing in the Xfinity Series. Obviously, it's a little bit easier for them in terms of brand guidelines and the sponsors and everything like that. You're not dealing with as many like Fortune 500 companies or, companies that are spending upwards of a couple $100,000 to be on these race cars. And it's a little bit easier to tweak and change colors and do all the things over there. So I understand it, but it's still cool to see them, really take initiative. And people are going to be like, oh, Throwback Weekend's run its course, and I don't think it has. I want to see as many throwbacks as possible, and heck, if we only get like 4 throwbacks a year, I don't care. It's still cool to see throwback paint schemes to different things. I was kind of hoping William Byron would have had a Jurassic Park throwback, the T-Rex car that Gordon ran, since we're getting a Jurassic Park later this year. But his 2015 Homestead Finale throwback is still good enough. We also had, one more honorary mention here because it just popped back into my brain. Sam Mayer in the Xfinity Series is doing a Kurt Busch 2017 Daytona 500 throwback, complete with a piece of grass on the hood. Not an actual piece of grass, but vinyl printed piece of grass on the hood there. And it looks really well done as well. They didn't change the font around, though. They kept it with the new Haas factory font, not the old Stewart Haas Racing font, which is kind of interesting because, well, I don't know who owns the IP for that. Maybe Tony does because, well, his other cars still run that style font. I don't know. Looks good. Happy to see everybody out here doing this stuff. Cole Custer, though, he's also doing a Jimmy Spencer Target throwback, which, not having Target on the car, but he's got Haas, looks great as well. So happy to see people are participating in Throwback Weekend, and I'm sure we're going to get a few more before we get to Darlington next weekend. What's the old saying? History repeats itself. It's definitely true when it comes to Reddit and NASCAR fans, because every 6 months there's always going to be a thread that's posted and the person's going to be like, I think we should go back to Kentucky Speedway. And then every time there's going to be 300 comments of people debating whether or not we should go back, we shouldn't go back, and then ultimately they're just not going to go back. So the Cup Series hasn't been back to Kentucky Speedway. No series has been back to Kentucky Speedway since the pandemic, since 2020. And now with the Gen 7 car racing really well on intermediate tracks, it's got fans, weirdly enough, clamoring to go back to mile and a half. So at one point in NASCAR history, if you've been around long enough, you remember when everybody was tired of cookie cutter tracks. We're tired of these mile and a halves. We want to go to short tracks. We want to go other places. NASCAR does that, and now everybody's like, we got to get back to mile and a halves. Mile and a halves are great racing. And don't get me wrong, with the Gen 7 car, they are actually really good racing. I am not convinced, though, that Kentucky Speedway is going to be good racing. Now, Kentucky Speedway is the closest racetrack to me. It's about, 45 minutes to an hour from Cincinnati for the most part, depending on traffic. Getting across the Brent Spence is going to take you the better part of anywhere from 30 minutes to 4 hours. So you might want to package provisions with you because who knows, you could just be stranded on 75 and or 71 for eternity at this point. But once you clear the bridge and get into the Commonwealth, then your drive is really not that bad. You get to go through the scenic rolling hills of Kentucky, and then all of a sudden, boom, Kentucky Speedway's there. In Sparta, in the middle of nowhere, which is really part of the reason why it's not on the schedule anymore, is because there's literally nothing around it. At least with Kansas, they were able to build an entertainment district around it. Basically, the suburbs were built around Kansas Speedway. At Kentucky, yeah, there's nothing. Even the strip club outside of Kentucky in Sparta closed down. That's bad. That's really bad. When Racers is closing down, you know things are really bad with the economy of the local area there. But we've seen photos of it recently, and you can see it here. It's starting to look like a lost racetrack. You got grass growing up everywhere. I will say that the lawn care team is still doing a phenomenal job. It has one of the worst layouts ever for a garage area. Obviously, when it was built as a bit of a tribute to Darrell Waltrip. D-shaped oval with the garages in the shape of a W. And for anybody that ever has walked through the garages there, on a race day in July, it's, the seventh circle of hell. Even the devil thinks it's hot there. I nearly had a heat stroke, not actually, because I'm in really good shape, but you feel like you're going to have a heat stroke when you're hanging out on that black asphalt all day long in the middle of July in Kentucky. And if you've never experienced a Kentucky summer, it is the most miserable thing on earth. Chase Elliott is from Georgia, not exactly the coolest place in the world, also has humidity, and he said, this is the worst place I've ever been in terms of the temperature, and he's not wrong. But the question is, will this track race well? I'm not convinced that it will. Mainly because when they repaved it in 2016, they also reconfigured turns 1 and 2. They raised the banking in turn 1 and 2 from 14 degrees up to 17 degrees. Meanwhile, they left turns 3 and 4 at 14 degrees. So now you have two different banked corners at opposite end of the racetrack here. They also narrowed up turns 1 and 2 by about 20 feet. I think it's 19 technically, but they narrowed it up, raised the banking, but then left the banking at the other end where it was. And ultimately, it didn't produce any good racing. I think for the most part, most fans are going to remember two things from the Cup Series there. They're going to remember the Busch versus Busch battle of Kyle Busch and Kurt Busch in 2019. Phenomenal race, was there for it, thought it was great, thought the finish was great. Finish was great. Most of that race wasn't very good. Then you're going to have 2020, another year where the racing was not good, but Cole Custer managed to steal a win there on a late race restart. And I think people are like, oh, this was really exciting, except the race was pretty bad. Overall, I think Brad Keselowski would be super hyped if we went back there. He's a 3-time winner at Kentucky, but for the most part, it doesn't race well. And I'm not convinced it will with the new car either. Sure, the asphalt has definitely worn. And as you can see right here, Dylan Hogel sent me some of these photos in the offseason when he was at the racetrack. And you can tell that is a very grayed out surface. The PJ1 appears to have worn itself off, and maybe it would be a good surface to race on. But having opposite end of the racetrack be different banking just isn't super conducive for good racing. Look at Texas. Texas is kind of the same way, and Texas stinks. Outside of like if you just get out of the groove there, it's not very fun to go to Texas right now. Maybe it's going to get better over time, but for the most part, not very good. Now, maybe you have a test at Kentucky just to be like, hey, is this going to work? Is it not? And if it doesn't work, then you just throw it under the floor mat. We're never going to talk about it again, that type of thing. Overall, I'm just not sold on it. One, nothing has been built up around Kentucky Speedway. It's still in the middle of nowhere. It's still halfway between Cincinnati and Louisville. The only thing that Kentucky Speedway could potentially have going for it is the involvement of major Cincinnati companies in NASCAR right now. You have Fifth Third Bank over at RFK Racing. You also have Kroger over at RFK Racing as well. Those are two gigantic Fortune 500 companies in Cincinnati that spend a decent amount of money on motorsport. So if they want to get a race back close to them, then maybe you could see something happen there. But if they're not going to be involved, there's chances of this racetrack coming back are slim to none, because what track is SMI going to take a race away from in their current portfolio? They're just not. The date that Kentucky had went to Atlanta, and right now everybody loves Atlanta, so they're not going to take that date back. So it's kind of up in the air. Obviously, if they don't get a deal done at Circuit of the Americas, that's a free SMI date, but it feels like that deal is going to get done over there. So I don't think Kentucky's coming back. Corey LaJoie also says that my idea that it's not going to race really well, it's a cold take. So it could be good. It could not be. I'm just not sure if it's actually worth the try at this point. On Friday, we also got news that two-time Xfinity Series winner Jesse Love will be making his NASCAR Cup Series debut next month at Bristol Motor Speedway, driving the number 33 car for Richard Childress Racing, sponsored by C4 Energy. It'll be obviously his first start in the Cup Series, and a somewhat anticipated one. I think there's a lot of people that are high on Jesse Love, especially within the RCR camp. He has 2 career wins, one at Talladega, one at Daytona to start off this season. He's shown speed at a lot of racetracks, just kind of needs to get over that hump on a non-drafting track and pick up the win there. He had a dominant run in the ARCA series. The kid has a ton of talent, and he's still developing into a pretty solid race car driver. Now, him getting a start in the Cup Series is certainly a good thing for him. Obviously, there's been a lot of talk about RCR maybe wanting a third chart and stuff like that heading into this season. They have 2 drivers in the Xfinity Series, Austin Hill and Jesse Love, who both could be pretty formidable Cup Series drivers. Austin Hill seems pretty content where he's at in the Xfinity Series, but he'll be making 5 Cup Series starts this year as well. We'll see what Jesse Love can do in that third car for RCR. The third car last year for RCR never really ran that well. Will Brown had a bad outing with it at Sonoma, had speed, bad outing. Then you had Austin Hill running that car multiple times last year and never finished better than 25th, I think. So it is kind of like the stepchild when it does run, it feels like, but it's still good for Jesse Love to get that experience, to be in the race. And I don't anticipate more than 40 cars showing up, so he should be locked in regardless. But hey, good for Jesse Love. Get out there, get that experience. Bristol is a pretty daunting racetrack, right? You're talking about 500 miles. Holy shit. 1,000 laps at Bristol. No way. 500 laps at Bristol for Jesse Love coming up in April. We'll see what he can do. Maybe he is the future of RCR when they kind of figure out what their future is going to look like with the Cup team later this year. We'll see what happens. So let me know in the comments what you think about the throwback paint schemes. Should we go back to Kentucky? Jesse Love making his Cup debut. Like and subscribe to the channel. Follow me on TikTok at BreakHard, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at BreakHardBlog.